Wow. It wasn't it wasn't recording. Okay. What do I do? Do I start again? Wilson?
Just recap and then you can start. Can I
Okay.
can I take the host and I'll share it from the side, the slide?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're just going to summarize the three concepts that we are dealing with: stereotypes, biases, and culture. We say that all these three concepts are intertwined and they share an understanding of the world around us. Stereotypes, they say, are a generalization about a group or individuals based on assumptions made by an observer. Biases, on the other hand, they make an assumption that leads to a judgment or a decision, which is not always supported by facts or evidence. Culture is a set of values, beliefs, and norms that are communicated across generations, and they can be seen in languages, religion, customs, and all the other examples that it makes. And then it says culture shapes our behavior and thought processes and guide us as we interact with each other in society. And then, as we have already said, that all these three concepts are intertwined and they influence how we perceive our environment and interact with each other. This is that slide. We're on that slide. So we have to understand the role that these three play if we want to live in an equitable society. We have to recognize the potential that they have in our behavior and try to reduce the impact that they have on our lives. Fourth slide. It's just that the problem that I'm going to have, Milton, is that I'm actually using my slides over here and I can't see what you guys are using. Maybe I can, I may be ahead of you. That's why I think I'm going to be mentioning all the slides so that you can catch up with me, if that's fine. Okay, I'm on the fourth slide. A stereotype is a fixed overgeneralization, overgeneralized belief about a particular group or category of people. Stereotypes are often negative and they can be damaging and hurtful. They can cause people to make assumptions about others without actually knowing them, and they can lead to prejudice and discrimination. Stereotypes become apparent when we see a group of people who seem to share certain characteristics. For example, if we see a group of people wearing the same type of clothing or having the same hair color, and we may assume that they are all the same in other ways too. We may then think of them as being somehow different from us and then start to judge them based on our preconceived notions. Fifth slide. Over time, these assumptions can become so ingrained that we no longer even realize that we're making them. If we are not careful, stereotypes can easily become self-fulfilling prophecies. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a phenomenon in which our beliefs about another person can cause them to act in accordance with that belief, even if it is not true. This term particularly applies to stereotypes, where people may expect someone of a certain race, gender, or other group membership to behave in a certain way and then interpret their behavior in line with that expectation. This can lead to a confirmation of the stereotype that is perpetuated despite evidence to the contrary. Um, Okay, it makes in the next slide, it gives us an example about different stereotypes. It says, if you believe that Italians are lazy, then if one believes that Italians are lazy, they may ignore any signs of hard work from an Italian person and seek other reasons why they do not conform to their expectation. In this way, beliefs about someone can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is important to try and recognize when we are interpreting someone's behavior through the lens of our own expectations so that we can avoid perpetuating stereotypes that may not be accurate. Okay, just a second. Can you just give me a second? Yes. Okay, I'm back. Um, where were we? Okay, we were on the example of Italians being lazy as a stereotype. And it says, if you believe that they are lazy, you may ignore any hard work that they do because you already believe that they are lazy. So it's important to try and to recognize when you are interpreting someone's behavior through your own lens, not what they actually are. And it says it is important to be aware of one's own stereotypes and work on them to avoid making them. And we have to make an effort to interact with groups that we may not be inclined to due to the stereotypes. And when we do, you actually find that what you first believe is not actually true. When you try to interact with people, leaving behind all the stereotypes that you once believed about them. So, knowing that our test is gender, what would you say is the most fixed belief in this world that we live in? That's a question for everyone. What is the most famous or the most held belief? What would you say that is? Knowing that our test is gender, of course. Question for everyone. Hello? Hey, am I talking to myself? Are you all still there?
Yes.
Yes. Are you guys understanding what I'm saying about stereotypes, how they lead to believing things that may not be accurate or true about others? And they're based on our beliefs on that certain group or individual. So I'm saying, knowing that our test is gender, what is the most commonly held belief in the world, actually? What would you say is the most commonly held belief? That is not necessarily true.
One is that men are superior
Yeah,
than female.
yeah, that is the one I'm looking for. That is the most obvious of them all. And the fact that in this discussion we're even talking about culture. It's something that always gets me about culture is that as diverse as all the cultures of the world are, they all meet at the same point, maybe two, but there's one that they always meet at it's how they treat women. I don't know if I'm the only one that actually sees it that way. They may be different. They outside appearances may be different, but they all meet at how they treat women. Yes, the other factor is the nationalism or tribalism or whatever, sectarianism. But I see them meet at how they treat women, all the cultures of the world. So I think culture is one of the most instrumental instruments when it comes to keeping the patriarchy because it shows inequality between, say, the most obvious men and women, sects, or tribes. It makes it impossible for people to actually see each other as equals. Right. We are on the seventh slide. As humans, we are naturally wired to make snap judgments based on limited information available. This often leads us to act on bias, which can be harmful, which can have harmful consequences. For example, if we see someone who is different from us, we may be quick to judge them based on our own preconceptions. This can lead to discrimination and prejudice, which can in turn lead to conflict and division. We see how our brains, how we are so quick to make snap decisions. And these decisions are always based on information that is not true, on what we believe of other people. And these can be very harmful. And it's in these divisions that we most of our conflicts come from. Slide number 8. One way to counter the natural tendency is to be more aware of our own biases and make a conscious effort to overcome them. By getting to know people who are different from us, we can learn to appreciate them for who they are and see them as individuals rather than members of a group. Additionally, by encountering new ideas and perspectives, we can open our minds and better understand the world around us. Only by acknowledging and actively working to overcome our own biases can we hope to create a more understanding world. Slide number 10 and slide number 9. Slide number 9. Stereotypes create a single-dimensional judgment about someone without regard for truth or accuracy that is one-dimensional. Sorry, this one-dimensional perception of a person can lead to biased decisions or even discrimination. Slide number 10. The difference between bias and stereotype is that bias is a personal preference, a like or a dislike, especially when the tendency interferes with the ability to be impartial, unprejudiced, or objective. I think just from this difference, this one that actually highlights what biases are, I think if biases are even more dangerous because you can't even notice that you are biased towards someone because it's you're just acting on your bias. They are so ingrained in you. They are just a part of you. Oh, okay. And okay, and it makes a contrast between the bias and stereotypes, and says stereotypes is a preconceived idea that attributes certain characteristics in general to all members of a class or a set. Like, for an example, if you think that all Asians are smart or white men can't dance, that is a stereotype. But if you hire an Asian for a job that also has an equally qualified black applicant, because you think that blacks are not smart as Asians, then you are biased. Do you see how dangerous biases can be? Do you see how they can lead to people making a decision based on what they believe about Asians as compared to blacks? Do you guys get how powerful these things are? I remember Trevor Noah used to make a joke about how black accents are associated with not being smart. You know, he was right, because when you actually when you expect when you measure someone's IQ with their accent, you're not always gonna no, you're not actually gonna get a right, how can I put it? You can't measure someone's IQ with that person's accents, because we get accents from the education that we've had. I went to a public school. Uh, that's why I'm gonna always be speaking this way, because I can educate myself to speak better. But I think the fact that I went to a public school in which I was taught by someone who spoke English this way, it's a matter of me trying to improve using other tools. But I think it will always have an effect on my English. Not that it's a cap, like it's closed, but I can't speak English like someone who went to a Model C school. You guys understand what I'm saying? So you can't say just because I went to a public school and someone else went to a Model C school, you're gonna judge these two people by their accents, because their accents are different. But that doesn't mean that you cannot get someone who's actually smart, because these people write the same matric paper at the end of their matric. But you have someone with like high marks from a public school, and someone with a low marks from the Model C school. That's already proof that you cannot use accents as a measure of IQ. Someone smart or brilliance, you can't use them. So do you see how biases or stereotypes are actually not based on true information? You guys following? I understand what I'm putting forward.
Yes.
Right.
No?
Yes, Milton.
Okay. Just to add,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at that distinction between bias and stereotype,
Mm.
what's interesting is when you look at the characteristics that are painted on the bias, it's
Mm-hmm.
personal preference, dislike, or like, especially when the tendency interferes with the ability to be impartial.
Yes.
That is one of the limitations which, even when it comes to the message of equality in general, like when you look at the recent studies which El Dopamine was saying, for us to really understand or practice equality, there has to be good laws. But
Mm.
when you look at those laws, they are not going to be enforced. They still need individuals to choose to comply. And when you look at the principle of free will, you can still dislike even something that is good. And no one is going to force everyone to say this is a good law, so you are forced to like it or to do according to it. So even in a world where good laws which represent equality are there, people can still have this dislike of something that is good, and you cannot force them. And it makes it difficult for us to end up having a same mindset when it comes to how to treat each other, because we choose our likes and our dislikes. So I think it's really critical to understand biases, even when it comes to good things. They can still tarnish our thinking.
Yes, that's a powerful point. That's a really powerful point because I remember when I heard him actually talking about, I think I don't know if it's only me, but I have this tendency of when the message says, okay, now you have to go to the left and watch CNN and watch all these things. I tend to go on overdrive and just focus on watching CNN and whatnot. So we know that you said CNN is good, right? But if we're being honest, if we really can be able to analyze, we can see that they are biased as well. The left are biased when it comes to let's just make an example of the story that came out. Donald Trump went to Arlington National, that cemetery, and he okay, the rule says you mustn't make campaigns. You can't use the cemetery to campaign. The truth of that story is that Donald Trump went to Arlington National and he campaigned. The biases are at work like this. The left is going to spin that story, that one true story, the way they see it fits for them. And then the right are going to spin that very same story and make it work for them. It's like we live in a world where there is the truth of actual of what really happened, and then there's a spin of that truth. That spin depends on whether you are left or right. And I think it's really important for us to understand what Elder Parminda is really saying. There is the truth of the events that really happened, and then that events get spinned in two ways, especially in America. Here in South Africa, we have a lot of political parties. They can spin their stuff in 100 different ways. But I see a hand. You can speak. I don't know who's. Go ahead.
Oh, I forgot to lower mine. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was saying we I hope you guys understand. That's how I actually understood what he was saying, that there is a truth and then there's a wherever you belong, how the truth is going to be interpreted. It's on how, it's on where you belong, on the left or on the right. That's how they spin them. Not to say the left, not to say everything about the left is wrong, but for us to just understand that there's a true story and then they're going to put it, interpret it the way that suits them. Okay. And when it comes to biases, the part that says it interferes with someone's ability to be impartial, I think that's the part that we should be like really be careful when it comes to it, because if there's something else that we are supposed to see in the US election, is that election has somehow become like seriously the most visible thing where you can see the men versus women. I don't know if it's clear that the Democrats are for women. Okay, yes, we know that they don't get equality as we do, but you can see the distinction. You can see Donald Trump going to quote the menoverse. You can see Harry is trying to raise the groups that have been ignored all along. And I remember watching CNN, and I think it was Wolf Blitz's show, and there was this man talking about how white men feel neglected by the Democratic Party. And you remember the Black Lives Matter movement, which Elder Paminda used an example of. He said Black Lives Matter is not saying everyone's life doesn't matter as well. It it assumes, and it's true, that white lives already matter. So to actually, it is making a point that Black lives matter as well as much as white lives. So when I was watching this guy talking about white men feeling deserted by the Democratic Party, and I was thinking he doesn't get that. And it's true. I think the people who are leaving the Democratic Party are people who are feeling like they don't belong there, because it's all about inclusion. It's all, no one is saying white men don't belong there. No one. When Kamala Harris is talking about the middle class, that includes all races, but somehow they feel left out by the Democratic Party. So, okay, let me go back to talking about the election being about race in a way. It's a race, not race, sorry, gender at the top of the ticket. You see gender at the top of the ticket when you see Trump versus Harris. And you when I was fortunate enough to be able to watch the DNC and the RNC. And if you guys were able to actually watch those two, what do you call them? Yeah, the Republican National Convention, in the RNC, the overlying theme, okay, maybe not to say the overlying underlying theme, they kept on saying the Democrats don't even know what women are. And in that statement, you can, it goes beyond just transgender and what they say about transgender people. They're actually trying to, in that statement, they're trying to put women in their place. I don't know if you guys were able to see that. They are trying to tell us where women belong. They believe that women are supposed to follow, not lead. Okay, let me go back to slide number 11. So now we are going to see stereotypes as per the gendered brain by Gina Ripon. Yeah, Ripon. If I may ask, what is your main takeaway from the gendered brain, especially the first few chapters in which she's talking about the technological inventions. What technological inventions that kept coming up, and and how they were used for brain imaging. What is your main takeaway? What did you get from that? I'm asking for those who were able to actually read the book, The Gendered Brain. Okay, has anyone read it? Let's start there. Hello?
Hey, Nokukhanya,
Yes,
kunjani?
Yapila.
Yes. Just a quick comment. It's Tato.
All right.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit on the stereotype within the left wing.
Mm-hmm.
When you spoke about it, I remember the time the issue between Israel and Hamas was starting, you
Mhm.
could see the different analysis from Al Jazeera and BBC.
Yeah.
And there and there, it became clear how actually BBC, CNN, they were
Mm.
speaking about Hamas, and they would not be commenting in a favorable way because of
Mhm.
their biasness towards Israel. Like they would
Yeah.
speak about Israel in a way that, Israel is a good country and all that, but forgetting what actually Israel is doing to the Palestinians. So the reason that even Palestinians they were doing what they were doing, it was just because of their acting on what has been happening all along. So there and then, I began to see the shift between CNN and BBC. You know, these people they are going to analyze and say stories based on their biasness.
Yeah.
And even today, when you look at BBC, you look at CNN. CNN will be not CNN, but Al Jazeera. You will
Yeah.
get what actually is happening inside Gaza, but BBC will never tell you what's happening inside Gaza. You see that? And it was so painful because of you can see how the world bought into what CNN and BBC were actually saying and forgetting about what is actually happening even within Gaza. You see that they will continue the lies that Netanyahu will be saying about the Palestinians. And there was a point, there was a time when even Biden was saying that the Palestinians, Hamas, beheaded children. You see that, and that same lie was repeated over and over and over and over. That's a left wing source. You see, and you see, Al Jazeera will be debunking what actually has been said because it was a lie. You see, so even within the left wing, the dangers we need to be, I think, be very careful as we are
Mm.
sifting through and be able to see the how actually they put through information. It will be on a biased um, notion, I think. So yeah, I wanted to add on what you were saying about that, just to add more information as well.
Thank you. And speaking of the Israel-Palestine war, when it comes to the left wing, we say at least they have a better take compared to the right wing. But I noticed this when they are talking about the Palestinian freedom of state, the Palestinians getting their own state. It's never it's never Palestinians getting their own, what do you call it? It's never the two-state solution first and Israel's security first. It is always Israel's security and then the Palestinians. They're already showing you that there's a hierarchy there. It's never the Palestinians on top and then Israel next. They are already showing you whose priority. This is the likes and dislikes. So it's really important for us to understand that even the right information has biases. They have their own stereotypes. They have their own people who they like. They've already grouped every single Palestinian as a terrorist. Okay, maybe that's going too far. But the treatment of Palestinians is just not right. They are treated as not even second rate, third rate. I don't know what rate citizens when you compare how the world treats an Israelite's life compared to a Palestinian life, it's just it's shocking. It's been shocking to witness, to say the least. Mm.
Hi, Kanye.
Hello,
Yes, it's Dodo.
all right to do.
I just want to add on what you have been saying.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you look at the the foreigners here in South Africa. We have foreigners that were staying with in South Africa. People will say foreigners are they are selling drugs, all those type of things that they used to say, but without noticing that there are some of them who are not like that. When they go to, more especially in Gauteng, when they went to destroy their shops, they said it's because they are criminals in South Africa. They are doing criminals. Um, but when you look at that, you can see that it's not all of them. It's those that are doing the wrong things. But there are some who are not like that. Same thing applies when you, as as we are blacks, we are going to say all the whites are they have oppression towards the blacks. But when you get closer, maybe to one of the whites, you will notice that she's not like that, or she's different from what you have been thinking. I just wanted to add on that.
Thank you so much, Dudu. Elder Paminda once did a study in which he said, a part is not a whole. Unfortunately, when it comes to us, we see one thing, just one thing, and that one thing is enough. Maybe one person doing something, and that one person becomes that whole group. And speaking of the xenophobia that you just mentioned, Dudu, yo, you know, when you are actually failing to see the problem, when you are failing to see that there's a problem, you go to all sorts of things, trying to actually justify your own actions, because we know that the thing that happened, the miss essay thing, although we don't really focus so much on the Miss Universes and all that, but that this was an external event that actually was huge for our country, and it actually showed how people view people, for them, what it means to be South African, and to show just how South Africans feel about Nigerians, to see just what lengths can be taken for people to actually separate people into groups and say you don't belong here just because you are of Nigerian descent. To see just how far people will go. I know where the story is right now, but if we were to be honest, the source of that whole thing that happened is xenophobia, if you're being quite honest. Okay. Let's continue. Oh, all right. I was talking about the gendered brain. I was asking what's your main takeaway from the first few chapters of the gendered brain? I guess no one is, yeah, no one has a comment on that. So I'm just gonna share my takeaway. My takeaway is that Gina is showing us here that everyone.
Kanya,
Hello?
yeah, before you share yours, since well you're a teacher,
All right.
my quick takeaway from that book was the brain is plastic,
Yeah.
and yeah, that one stood out for me.
Yeah.
The brain being plastic, and to that, you know how science they have been pushing or advocating to say that our brains, a male's brain and a female's brain, they
Yeah.
are of different sizes. And a male's brain is bigger than that of a woman, and that's why you see men can be able to do things like maths and you all these other works is because of their brains are bigger, and
Mm.
women's brains are less developed. So yeah, it just debunked so many misconceptions that I was having from a cult a cultural view, because of how culture was teaching us. It was basis based on that actually. Ukuthi, um, a man is more stronger mentally is because of 1, 2, 3.5. You see that,
Yeah.
and we were using who's this guy who came up with evolution, and we're using that very same notion. And today, when you look at Christianity, they are using that very same, especially when you go to the United, because of our Christianity, we take it from Protestantism.
Mm.
Protestantism, they are taking it from actually um, this guy who was pushing evolution, you see. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just demolished everything that I used to believe.
Thank you. Thank you. I saw that too. Um, let me just give you my takeaway when you actually focus on the first a few chapters, when it was talking about the inventions that were coming up and how those inventions were used when it comes to brain imaging. What she's showing us here is that people already have had like they already had fixed views. As Tato was just saying, they already had conclusions about female and male brains. They already what they were looking for exactly is a way to prove how men and women's brain were different. They were looking for differences, and anything that actually went against that that already fixed mindset that they had. They didn't want to see that. When you go into something with having already concluded what you're looking for, the truth is that anything that goes against what you already believe, you are gonna like leave it aside. So that's what I saw, because I don't know the inventions. The last one that I remember, because it's mentioned a lot, is the fMRI, because that's one I think is mentioned a lot. And she says, with every invention, a study will come out. It will come out that will show that men and women's brain, they're really different. And even that will be like news, and you will have magazines. You'll have even CNN quoting that study. And even if someone years later were to come out with a study that actually opposes that famous finding, what will happen is that the first study will actually still persist. And I think that is true, because when you are to look at how newspapers or whatever headline or whatever story that comes out, do you ever notice that the first story that comes out is the most famous one? It's the one that sticks. Even if you were to print a retraction, no one cares about the retraction. The story that remains and the one that sticks with people is the first one that was printed. Do you guys see that?
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to give an example in adding this on what you're saying. You mentioned that, like, when you look, for example, the US election, it's like men versus women.
Mm-hmm.
One of the struggles that you are seeing is that the perceptions about men and female playing out in this election. Like, there's an example which was given. it's one of the channels from the left which did an analysis based on what others are saying. So most of the right are leaning, even people on the left are buying this idea that they don't know Kamala Harris. They don't know her, who she is. And someone mentioned something about experience, that she's not experienced in leading a country. And then this guy said, okay, let's take that as a fact, not to say is it true or wrong, and look at the history and the background of the two candidates. And when they did that, they showed the years which she has served before she became a politician and after, compared to Donald Trump, just on the fact of experience.
Yeah.
Even they compared with other presidents who have been famous in the United States. Donald Trump has zero experience. He has never served as a public figure in America before. It's just now the 4 years that he took a chance on. Compared to her, she has actually years of service. I think it goes up to 21 years of public service. And other years where she started serving in important offices before she became a politician, they add up to 31.
Yes.
So she became the most experienced candidate in the history of the United States. I think backing that to 1798, if you are to be honest, she is more experienced than any candidate ever. But with all that, she still has to prove that she can lead. And people still don't care about those facts. They would still doubt and just trust a man, even if he has zero experience doing that job.
Yes.
It just showed how people are struggling when it comes to trusting women. And you can see how gendered our brains are.
Yes. I saw that missing. I saw that show. I think it was The Beats with Ari Melba. He showed just how experienced she was. She was experienced with more than any of them. But because she's a woman, she still has to prove that she's actually fit for the job. Yo, that was powerful. I saw this and I was like, oh my God. People are like, we don't know who she is. She's gone through the ranks, rising up the ranks and doing her thing. Experience is not a problem when it comes to Kamala Harris, if we're being honest, seriously, the fact that it's even a contest between her and Trump, it shows you just how powerful biases or whatever, how people feel when it comes to men versus women. It shouldn't even be a contest if we're being quite honest. Because it's clear who should be present between them. But I think it's everything that is in between, the spins of everything, what people believe about other groups, what people are capable of, how they. It's one of the. I don't know if it's the Janet Brain when he was talking about men say, "Oh, she who is afraid of a little mouse? How can she rule the most powerful country in the world?" I think it goes back to that. They still see women as you are afraid of a little like animal, like a mouse, or you run when you see a mouse or a frog. I'm terrified of frogs, by the way, but I think I can. There are a whole lot of things that I can do. I'm able to do as a woman. So this thing of just thinking women are subhumans, it permeates through from one society to another. It's a commonly shared belief. It's something that just keeps persisting no matter what, no matter the experience, no matter what.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. I just wanted also to add on 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 this one of Kamala Harris, how also it's being mentioned, as much as it can be seen that she really worked hard for herself to be in that position. a woman is viewed when you are in that higher position as if you have slept with men for you to get to that. It's never looked at as you really sweated for it. You did a lot for you to be, which is genuine for you to be in that position. So it's another bias, another stereotype which people run with. Yeah, which we are also seeing when we hearing what's happening in America, what's happening to Kamala Harris and other women who are in higher position.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually heard that, and I think the left is trying not to focus so much on what Trump was trying to do, trying to stereotype her as someone who slept her way to the top. Quite honestly, I was shocked by that. You know, stereotypes actually exist, but you kind of think society is getting better. Like, come on, we know better now. You can't just go back to the same old stuff and call her someone who slept her way to the top. Like, she's gone through so many elections to actually get to the one that she's actually contesting. To say all that way from what AG to okay, I forget the cards in their order, but to actually say she was living her way to the top in all those positions to actually get them, it's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. So we see that the things that we believe about groups or individuals, they actually still persist even now. So as I was saying, Gina Rippon is showing us that with every study that was done, they already had a full-blown conclusion that you're going to see differences between the female and the male brain. So she says the information our social brains are sifting through will not always be a closely detailed and nuanced profile of each and every individual or situation we encounter. This is slide number 11. In fact, it is much more likely to be a broad brush shorthand sketch of people like me versus people like them. So the information being input into our social sat-nav may not be wholly accurate and may even be misleading. And she said, welcome to the world of stereotypes and prejudice. Slide number 11. Stereotypes are defined by the Oxford Dictionary as an image or an idea of a particular type of a person or a thing that has become fixed through being widely held, as we were saying before. It is fixed because that is what everyone else believes. It is the generally believed standard. It is the assumption, the assumption that, let me start again. The assumption is that every member of a particular group will show characteristics that are supposedly typical of that group. These characteristics are often negative, tight-fisted Scots, absent-minded professors, airhead blondes, and sometimes refer to particular abilities or lack thereof. And she gives us an example like women can't do maths or read maps, and men don't cry or won't ask for any directions. Slide number 13. And she asked, how close is the link between the activities of our social brain network and this register of prejudices and stereotypes that, like it or not, can readily be found in the outside world? How deeply embedded might this sort of information be in the system that is the basis of our self-identity, our group membership, and all the interactions we will have throughout our lives? So she's asking just how powerful the stereotypes are when it comes to how we identify ourselves and the groups that we belong to and the interactions that we'll have with others based on how we feel or how we think about those other groups in our lives. Slide number 13. There is evidence that the brain processes the kind of social categories that are associated with stereotypes differently from the way in which it processes other more general semantic knowledge. Okay, in this in this presentation, we're not really concerned about where brain activity occurs when it comes to studies. We are more concerned about what it means. So what that means, what the brain reaction means, more than what where the source of the brain activity come from. I don't know if you guys understand me. Because the point of the gender brain is to show, yeah, how the brain works and stuff, and differences or the lack thereof. So we are looking at what it means, not where it happens. So she says in one study during fMRI scanning, participants were given a semantic knowledge task. They were shown features such as watch romantic comedies. Sorry, watch romantic comedies, have strings, or grow in the deserts, or consume more beer. Just to show how powerful stereotypes can be, I'm 100% sure that's without even seeing, before even seeing the matching column, you already know who watches more romantic comedies. You've already matched without even seeing the other column. That's how powerful stereotypes are. And who consumes more beer. Next slide, 15. They had to match this with one of a pair of either social category, like men and women, or people from Michigan or Wisconsin, teenagers, investment bankers, sumo wrestlers, or mathematics teachers, or non-social categories such as violence, guitars, tornadoes, hurricanes, limes, or blackberries. Slide number 16. We're not, like I was saying, we're not concerned about where the brain, what brain function was used to show the stereotypes. We're more concerned about what that means. So it says here, although some aspects of social information may be stored in a neutral knowledge base, it is processed separately and tagged with inferences about what might be expected from members of a particular category, whether or not it will be positive or negative, or consistent or inconsistent with in-group standards, and how it relates to our sense of self. When it talks about in-groups, what do you think they're talking about? The in-groups. Those are the people that we associate ourselves with. They're part of us. That's who we would like to be seen with. That's how we identify ourselves. As a movement, I hope we know that, I hope we realize, I think we do realize that our in-group it goes against everything that has been put like in this categories that exist, because Elder Paminda already showed us that we don't belong with the non-religious, the atheists, yes. We don't belong there because they will think that we are too religious, but we don't belong with the religious as well because they will think we are too worldly or so we don't belong anywhere really. The consequences, or slide number 17, the consequences of attitudes in the world can alter both brain structure and function. The intersection of stereotypes and self-image tells us something about how what goes on in our social brain can interfere with our cognitive processes. If our self-image portfolio includes membership of a negatively stereotyped group, then activation of that particular fact can bring about the self-fulfilling prophecy or a stereotype or a stereotype threat effect. So if you already have an image of who you are and the people that belong to that group, that in-group, the in-group of your group, I don't know if that makes sense. We should realize that our in-group includes the LGBTQ community. I know we know that. Knowing how religious people feel about the LGBTQ community, and maybe let's just say Adventists, knowing how Adventists feel about the LGBTQ community, knowing how they feel about women leading, it should make us realistic about the prospects of us in this world. How people will actually view us when it comes to the religious groups. If you are concerned about how fellow Adventists view you because you're in groups include the LGBTQ community, you're in trouble. Because the point of this lesson is for us to actually break away from all stereotypes. Because if you actually keep them, chances are you still care about what the world say, what people around you view you. So we have to break away from all stereotypes because really what we are is different from anything that is in this world. How much time do we have left? Hello? Hello? Are you all still
Nokukhanya.
there? Yeah?
Yes, Nokukhanya.
Yes.
You can maybe close on 11 because it's yeah, it will be 1 hour 10 minutes. 10 minutes, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, let me just try to run through this last
You still have the afternoon.
I have another presentation for the afternoon. I want to finish this
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
I have another
okay.
slides for the afternoon. That's the thing. So I'm just going to try to wrap this.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, can we go to slide number 19? We're jumping now. Let's see. So I'm just going to give you a background of what had happened. They were doing a study in which they showed what may be categorized as bad people and good people, and they had someone who stole something, and they had a good guy, or someone who was considered a good guy, and they showed that when someone considered you to be bad, they don't expect anything good to come from you from that individual. They already concluded that you are bad, and they say here people were surprised when the guy who was considered to be bad bought flowers for his mom. Because when the options were given, people assumed that the one who will actually bring flowers to his mom will be the good guy. So it shows us that we tend to box people. It says our brain on slide number 19, it says our brain pays much more attention to bad things while building up a picture of a group. Negative snippets of the of someone or a group is what we use when you're profiling these new groups that you're given. Slide 21. It says our brains are not being changed by concrete data about sights and sounds in the outside world or by specific experiences and events. They are actually absorbing and reflecting the attitudes and expectations of those around us. We have predictive brains and can generate patterns to guide us around our external world. So the brain shows us not just what to expect from ourselves, but what to expect from others. And that is where we are using the information that we're given to actually make conclusions about others. And it says stereotypes are brain changes and provide an extraordinary powerful steer in determining the endpoint of both our behavior and our brain. So it's telling us that stereotypes can actually drive how we view and where we will go in our decision making on how we view others. Slide number 22. Let's talk about people trying to avoid social rejection, because I'm trying to be fast as I can, because if we had time, we would have been able to show that there's people who really care about connections, being able to not be rejected by members of society. So they want to be part of a group. They want to fit in. So their brains detect how they are being perceived in that group that they think they belong to, and do everything that they can to try and fit into that group and try to avoid rejection. So Gina talks about that the rules that have been made in slide number 23, the rules that have been made for men and women are out of date, and they have never served a good purpose. Okay, let me just read it as it is. A warning note should be sounded. Our understanding of the rules of social engagement that determine our place in the world and our journey through it may be based on information or guidelines which are no longer fit for purpose, if they ever were. Examining how different those rules seems for the girls and for boys, women and men, may reveal that this major evolutionary advance has not served both sexes well. And I think that is what we're saying in the movement, that the differences that have been made between men and women has not saved both rights. Because if we actually understand what Elder Paminda was saying when it comes to the test has always been ECC. So you have to shut down your compassion, no matter what the test is, to be the abuser. No matter where you are, you have to shut down your compassion. When the test was racism, you have to be blind to the suffering of the Black people. When the test is worship, you have to be blind and say only my religion is supreme. The rest are just, they are subhuman because your religion is supreme. And now the test is gender. So men have to shut down their compassion in order for them not to see that women are suffering, shut their emotions toward women's suffering. So we have to be able to see, it's obvious that sexism has been more harmful to women, that's clear, but it hasn't even served men right. It was never fit for purpose. Patriarchy was never fit for purpose. So I think I'm just going to stop there because of time. I don't know if we can start on the slides that we left. I don't know. We'll see. But what I want is, let me just go to the last slide. The last one, slide number 30. Elder Terry said that the strength of patriarchy is compartmentalizing. To compartmentalize is to put things into groups, separate people into groups. So when you do that, you make them see the differences between them instead of focusing on what makes them the same. So the strategy of divide and conquer is what is working in this world. She also said that the strength of our message is being able to see connections or patterns, using history to understand the present and the future. And from the history of Fabius Maximus Gauges, we connected that to the Sunday law represented by the flood from his name, Fabius Maximus Gauges. Knowing that this is an information war, it is important which information you use. Whether it was intentional or not, the world divides people according to stereotypes, biases. That is among other things, because there are a lot of ways in which they divide people as well. And we know that we have an internal message for understanding human beings. And that is the nature of man. That study shows us that in us, we have it in us to do both good and bad. And this does not depend on a category. It applies to us all. The fact that we can do both good and bad. It's not depending on whether you are Nigerian or South African. It's everyone has that in them to do both good and bad. And as we were saying, Ella said connections. We have to be able to connect. We have to connect that in June, Elder Terry quoted the strategies to counterattack patriarchal terrorism from the book The Demon Lover by Robin Morgan. And she quoted two strategies that can be used. She said it was self-defense and voting. And in June, Elder Paminda presented on self-defense and self-defense. And in July, he presented on voting. So I'm saying we have to be able to see the links, to be able to connect things. So the world uses differences to make us be this way, this mess that we are in. And we are saying there is an internal message that says all people, it's just that people. And we have to be able to, I recommend for all of us to go back and study the nature of men if we really want to understand human beings. And I'm saying it's the right information that makes us understand people, and that is the nature of men. Hello, still there? Yeah, I'm saying that is the nature of men that makes us understand human beings. And when it comes to voting, it's also information as well, that it's getting the right information that enables us to vote in a right way. If there are any comments, I think we're out of time. I think we can leave it there, unless someone has something to say. All right, we are going to close in prayer. Dear God in heaven, thank you for giving us the time to be together again. Sorry for we are over time. Thank you again. In the name of our God, Jesus Christ, amen.